Hey there, besties. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're going to continue the recap of the manhwa Betrayal of Dignity. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the video because it really helps our channel grow. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. Chloe couldn't believe what she was witnessing. The man kissed Alice, prompting her to moan slightly. Realizing they weren't alone, Alice tried to push the man away. "Ah, Chloe," Alice stuttered. Dear, Duke Damien said, not appearing shocked. "What on earth are you doing?" Chloe exclaimed, covering her mouth in shock. She was tense. "Go. They'll kill you if they catch you," Alice said, pushing her lover away. "I'd happily die right here," the man said with a smirk, ignoring the presence of Chloe and the Duke. "Please, Eddie," Alice pleaded, revealing his name. Eddie? Chloe thought instantly at the mention of the name. She quickly remembered her sister's words from some time ago. "I had an encounter with a bohemian at the village festival the other day. He was such an intriguing fellow," Alice had said, lying on Chloe's bed, looking exhausted. "He said his name is Eddie," she continued, smiling. "I do hope I get to see him again," she told Chloe, who remained silent. "Have they been seeing each other this whole time?" Chloe wondered, her face growing sad as she turned away from the Duke. He observed her mood change from the corner of his eye. Duke Damien held Chloe with his hand, keeping her steady from the shock. "Are you all right?" he asked with a worried look. "My apologies, Your Grace," Chloe said with a bow. Eddie bolted, dashing into the Duke's garden to escape. "Chloe," Eddie happened to appear out of nowhere. "I was taken by surprise," Alice stuttered, looking flustered as she spoke. Chloe looked at her sister coldly. "Stop talking, Alice," she said sternly. Turning to the Duke, she added gently, "Your Grace, my sincere apologies, but would you excuse me for a moment?" Duke Damien nodded, causing Alice to flinch. "While I send my sister away," Chloe told him, making it clear she needed privacy. Duke Damien understood her reasons and nodded. "As you wish," he said, giving her the go-ahead. "Thank you," Chloe replied. Alice stood still, knowing her sister would scold her. "Alice," Chloe said, raising her voice and startling her. "Go back to the carriage, now," she said angrily. Alice dashed off, running away from the Duke's garden. Chloe and Duke Damien stood facing each other in silence for a moment, Chloe's head bowed. "It looks like Lord Verdier's second daughter will be setting tongues wagging yet again," Duke Damien said, breaking the silence and shocking Chloe. "She's got quite a talent for causing a scandal each time she appears in high society," he said coldly. "I beg you, please," Chloe said, clutching her walking cane, her hands trembling slightly. "Please do not speak of this to anyone," she added calmly. "And why shouldn't I?" he asked, looking dumbfounded at her request. "I am sure you are well aware that no one would find fault with me," she told him. "But if I were to punish your family for the crime of bringing an unauthorized person onto my estate," he began. Chloe kept her head bowed, not daring to interrupt. She knew disaster would befall her family if she couldn't convince him to keep quiet about the matter. "I have to persuade him somehow. If I don't," Chloe thought amidst the silence. She let go of her cane and sank into her only option, bowing down to his feet, her face to the ground. "All of this is my fault," she said, "for failing to keep an eye on my foolish sister. I beseech you, punish me instead," she begged. "I am on my knees begging you," she continued, casting a pleading look at the Duke. "And if I refuse?" he asked, lowering himself onto one knee. "What will you do then?" he added, his tone challenging. Chloe was dumbfounded by his words, her heart beating faster. "Think, Chloe, there's no time to lose," she thought with a gulp. "Think of something for Father and Alice's sake," she told herself inwardly. "House Thisse is a family that values honor above all else. You are its sole heir, a celebrated commander who led your army to great victory during the war, and the first to ever be conferred an Order of Merit by the royal family," Chloe said, her voice growing confident as she remained on her knees, her face upright. "Do continue with the sweet talk," Duke Damien said, looking impressed by her praises. "You once said you would bring glory to those who fought alongside you in the war," Chloe continued. If you punish my family for my sister's mistake, it would tarnish your honor and go against the very values you uphold. She reminded him of his heartfelt speech to his injured troops at her family's estate. It was during that time that the lord of a remote castle opened his gates to your soldiers and showed them hospitality. Though he himself did not take up arms, his support must have proven invaluable, Chloe said, causing him to laugh. In other words, you want me to repay that debt, for that is the way of the honorable House Thisse? He asked, wearing a grin. I only ask that you show our humble family a little generosity for our service, Chloe said innocently. Have I not already repaid the favor by inviting you and your sister to a gathering of the most prestigious noble families in the kingdom? He replied, bending down towards her. It is your sister you should be blaming for trampling all over this opportunity. Now, do you have anything left to say? He asked, rising from the floor. Your Grace, Chloe exclaimed, causing Duke Damien to look sharply at her. She held his leg, bowing her face against the ground. What do you think you are doing? He asked, unmoved by her pleas. Just this once. If you could forgive us just this once, I will do anything you wish. I shall never forget your kindness, she told him, still holding his leg. Chloe was distraught. Duke Damien sighed. Chloe, why are you doing this? He said, holding her chin and lifting her face to meet his gaze. The noble woman who had her head held high. Where has she gone? Clinging to my feet and wailing that you'll do anything for me doesn't become you, he told her, his hand holding her face gently. At that moment, fireworks lit up the night sky, as the party continued inside the Duke's manor. But out in the darkness, Duke Damien and Chloe remained in the garden. The issue of your sister's marriage must be the reason you are begging me on your knees, he said softly. Your family's only hope for turning their fortune around is for either you or her to marry into wealth. A marriage of convenience, if you will. He paused, his voice gentle but probing. But what of your life, Lady Chloe? Do you not care what becomes of it? He asked, still holding her face. No, I do not, Chloe said silently. To me, happiness is seeing the people I love being well cared for, she told him calmly. And are you willing to do anything to achieve that? Duke Damien asked her, looking a bit perplexed at her answer. If it is within my abilities, Chloe replied, making him narrow his eyes at her. Interesting. Then I shall have to think about what you might be able to do for me in return. Now, go back to the Verdier estate at once, he commanded, stroking her face with authority. I would like that, Chloe said, nodding. She quickly remembered the prince's request to meet Alice later. But His Highness requested to be introduced to Alice, Chloe began, but she was cut short by the Duke. From this moment on, if you behave in such a way that attracts the attention of Johannes or any other man in the empire, I shall kill both you and your family with my own 2 hands, he told her, his threat carrying weight as his gaze turned menacing. These are the limits of my generosity, he continued, grazing his hand against her lips gently. And one more thing. I suggest you refrain from entering this area with men you do not trust, he advised. This garden is a place frequented by lovers who come to satisfy their unbridled passions, Duke Damien added, leaning in closer to Chloe's face. Her cheeks flushed red with embarrassment, her heart racing as she felt his proximity. Unless you are hoping rumors will spread about a scandal between the two of us, that is, he said, leaving her behind all by herself as she remained seated on the floor, despite the noise made by the fireworks that were fired in the estate. Chloe trembled slightly in the darkness. What a despicable man, she said, clenching her dress hard. Soon after, at her desk, Chloe began writing a letter to the Duke. To His Grace, Duke Damien Ernst von Thisse, my Lord Duke. I hope this letter finds you well. 3 months have already passed since my return from the exquisite city of Swain, where the sweet perfume of roses permeated the air, Chloe wrote, dipping her pen in ink before continuing. There is talk of marriage between my sister Alice and the gentleman she met at the ball that day. Our family is overjoyed, for he is a fine man of the highest moral character. I am well aware that this is the fruit of your generosity, Chloe wrote. After much deliberation as to how I might repay your kindness, it has come to the point where, she paused, pondering her choice of words. Come to the point where, she muttered to herself, finding the phrase excessive. As she sat there, slightly confused. "That seems a bit excessive," Chloe remarked. 3 months had passed since her encounter with the Duke at his estate. "Lady Chloe, I've brought you some refreshments," Gillis said, walking into her study with a tray. "Thank you, Gillis," Chloe said as he entered with refreshments. "How is Alice?" she asked. "She went out briefly in the morning but hasn't left her room since. She has been refusing all food, complaining of stomach discomfort," Gillis replied, setting the tray down gently. "I see," Chloe said softly. "She didn't go to meet that bohemian again, did she?" she asked. "I don't believe so. Lady Alice seems to have matured as of late," Gillis answered. "You're right. She should know better, especially with all the talk of engagement to Count Cormier," Chloe said. "The Count is a good man and a well-respected member of society. I know Alice will be happy with him. After all, he's a much better match than that itinerant man," she remarked harshly. "Lady Chloe," Gillis said gently, "if Lady Alice gets married, I fear that you'll become rather lonely," he added, bowing his head slightly. "Are you worried for me?" Chloe asked him. "I know it isn't my place," he replied softly. "How could that ever happen? I'll still have you." "Thank you for the concern, Gillis," Chloe said, making Gillis blush instantly, his face turning red. "My lady," he said, turning away from her, looking shy as she giggled at his awkward behavior. "Ah, since you're here, why don't you take a look at this letter for me?" she said, showing him the letter she was writing. "I'm writing to thank Duke Thisse for inviting us to the ball. But I feel that it's still missing something," Chloe told him. "He's so ill-humored that he'll find fault with it no matter what I write," she added. "If he's so ill-humored, he'll probably be even more disapproving of any delay in receiving this letter," Gillis was saying, scanning through the letters, before someone ran in, stomping the door open with a loud noise. "Chloe, my dear," Viscount Verdier said, calling his daughter. "Father?" Chloe said in amazement. "Get ready. Quickly now, Duke Thisse is coming to hunt at our estate," he said, smiling. "What do you?" Chloe began, looking surprised, but her words were cut short by her excited father. "As you know, our forests are full of wild animals," her father told her, not realizing that his daughter quivered at his news. "Why would he come all the way out here to go hunting?" Chloe thought in despair. "I only received the message a short while ago. It seems he will be arriving sooner than expected. With his passion for hunting, I suppose it isn't a surprise that he's racing to get here," her father said excitedly. Chloe sank deep into her chair, feeling overwhelmed by the news. She didn't know how to react to the Duke's impending arrival. Soon enough, Duke Thisse soon arrived at the Verdier's estate. "Greetings, Your Grace. It is an honor to have you here. I hope the blistering heat has not made you too weary," Viscount Verdier said, welcoming the Duke. "Have you been well?" he asked, wearing a smile. Duke Damien stood silently with a cold look, observing the servants. "You have far fewer servants than before," he said almost immediately, stunning the Viscount. "Yes, well, we've had several years of rather poor harvests," the Viscount was about saying before being cut short by Chloe. "Unfortunately, the castle is still in disarray. We received news of your arrival quite late," Chloe said politely, stepping forward to reply to the Duke. "Nonetheless, we shall do our utmost to make your stay comfortable," she assured him. "Yes," Duke Damien said with a grin. "I shall hold you to your word," he said, walking forward gently. "A noble who does not know how to be a gracious host does not deserve her title," he added, smiling as he approached Chloe. At the Castle Verdier, the family had dinner with their guest, Duke Damien. "I do hope you'll forgive us, Your Grace. It seems my youngest daughter Alice is feeling indisposed," Viscount Verdier said while they ate. "I hope it's nothing serious," Duke Damien asked, looking concerned. "Thank you for your concern," Viscount Verdier told him. "And we are much obliged for this splendid meal you have prepared for us," Duke Damien replied. "My apologies. It is us who should be entertaining you," the Viscount told him politely. "It is my pleasure, but what a pity. It seems this course is not to Lady Chloe's liking," he said, pausing his meal to steal a glance at the quiet Chloe who hadn't touched her food yet. He stared at her. I'm afraid the recent hot weather has had an effect on my appetite, Chloe told him calmly, her gaze not meeting his. Oh dear, it would do you some good to increase your resilience to the outdoors, he replied. It seems being in your Grace's presence has made my daughter nervous. Her love for the forest is such that it isn't uncommon for her to fall asleep while beneath the trees, Viscount Verdier said, chuckling. Chloe flinched a bit at his words. Is that so? Then she must be quite knowledgeable about the lay of the grounds, Duke Damien said, looking at the Viscount. That she is. It would be no exaggeration to describe the forest leading to the mountain as her very own private garden, her father told him, smiling. I recollect a time in which she fell horribly ill after returning from an outing. Yet even after suffering, she never stopped frequenting the woods, he said, bringing up her encounter with the Duke in the forest and the snake he killed unknowingly. You don't say, Duke Damien replied, pretending not to know what he meant. Now that I recall, it was precisely around the time you and your soldiers were staying with us in Castle Verdier, he added, as Gillis poured a glass of water. Are you quite all right, my lady? You look. Gillis leaned closer as he poured her water. Ah, thank you for the water, she replied, still tensed by her father's discussion, causing the Duke to remain silent, stirring his glass as he observed them. If she is so fond of the forest, I would like to request that she guide me on my hunt tomorrow, Duke Damien said, sipping his drink as he watched Chloe's facial reaction. Oh, I'm afraid Chloe will likely be a hindrance due to her condition, her father said, looking concerned for his daughter's well-being. If you will allow me, I shall find someone else to, he tried to offer, but he was cut off by the Duke. I'd like to hear what she thinks, Lady Chloe, he called with an elegant smile. He already knows, Chloe thought, crumpling her dress under the table as she looked at his face. There is but one possible answer to this, she thought, letting go of her dress. If you will permit my attendant to lead my horse, I will be most happy to accompany you, Chloe said finally. No. Her father exclaimed. You, my lady, shall be riding with me on my horse, the Duke told her. As you can imagine, I am not accustomed to following behind others, he added, holding his glass with a straight look. Soon, hunting time arrived. Chloe was dressed and stood outside, awaiting Duke Damien's arrival. There you are. Come, join me here, Duke Damien told her, offering his hand for her to use as support while getting on his horse's back. Is this safe? I've taken leisurely jaunts on horseback, but never a hunt, she thought quietly as Gillis stood beside her, watching the Duke on his horse. Besides, how am I supposed to trust this man? She thought, about to reflect on her decision before being interrupted by the Duke. Quickly now, he told her in a commanding tone. Would you be so kind as to hold my cane, Gillis? Chloe said, handing Gillis her cane. Will you be all right, my lady? He asked, looking concerned as he held her cane. Of course, Chloe told him confidently, before joining the Duke. It seems you and that attendant of yours are on rather familiar terms, Duke Damien said as they rode gently through the forest. You must be referring to Gillis, Chloe tells him. Yes, that servant of yours who was in the stables, he continued, referring to Gillis. He has been with our family ever since he was young. When our other servants were leaving due to unpaid wages, he chose to remain with us, Chloe explained. To my family, Gillis is much more than just an attendant, she tells him. In an instant, Duke Damien spurred his saddle hard, causing his horse to increase its pace, shocking Chloe in the process as she gasped. Your Grace, Chloe said, stuttering in shock. Directions, Lady Chloe, he told her, not minding her sudden fear as it increased the horse's galloping speed. Which way is it? Left or right? He asked, leaning forward towards her ear. Ah! She exclaimed, unsure of what to say. I need an answer, he told her, as he and his men with their hunting dogs increased pace. Left. We must go left, she said finally, her voice filled with urgency. Duke Damien's dog soon killed a deer, putting an end to their hunt. Whoa, whoa, looks like they've caught a deer. And a rather large one at that, Duke Damien said, his horse slowing down as he observed the scene. So you really do know the lay of the forest, he said to Chloe, sounding impressed. Did he do this intentionally? Chloe questioned herself. Was this meant to torment me? He is the devil incarnate, she concluded inwardly as she held onto the horse's strap. Duke Damien slowly used his hand to hold her head, surprising her. Shoo, he told her, signaling for her to be quiet. Breathe, Lady Chloe, he said, making her quiver. There, it's all over now, he said, calming her down. Later at night in the Verdier castle, the Verdier family sat down with their guest during dinner. I will be sending for the physician as soon as day breaks, Chloe says. The physician? Is something the matter? Viscount Verdier says, sounding surprised. His Grace was injured during the hunt. He was attacked by a wild animal and his wound should be seen to, Chloe says as she drinks water. Alice did not say anything as she ate her food. Goodness! Were you badly hurt, Your Grace? The Viscount asks, looking surprised. I was nipped while giving chase on foot. Hunting on horseback isn't enough of a thrill, you see, Duke Damien says, looking happy. If it is a small wound, Chloe should be able to stitch it up, Alice says, stabbing her steak with her fork. Alice! Chloe exclaims, disgusted by her opinion. Unfortunately, however, we do not have any anesthetic at hand, so you will have to bear with the pain, Alice says, giving him an awkward look. Your Grace, a physician would do a much finer job, Chloe exclaims, looking tensed. There are dozens of villagers falling ill from food poisoning each day now that it's summer, and there is only one doctor to attend to all of them. You always say we mustn't monopolize his time. Isn't that why you learned basic medical care? Alice says, eating her steak. I certainly do not wish to take away a valuable resource from the people of your domain. I am but a guest here, after all, Duke Damien says, wiping his mouth with a handkerchief. Would you mind taking a look after dinner, Lady Chloe? He says with a beaming smile as he wipes his hands. I think it more wise to send for a professional, Chloe protested. She is right. Allow me to send for him right away, her father was about to say before being interrupted by the Duke. Back when my soldiers were staying at your castle several years ago, the sight of Lady Chloe tending to their injuries left a deep impression on me. I have faith your daughter will do an excellent job, Duke Damien says, informing the Viscount. Oh my, you remember that? The Viscount says, beaming with joy. Of course, I haven't forgotten a single detail, Duke Damien says, glancing at Chloe's face. About the events that transpired on these grounds, he adds, as Chloe stares at him. Later, Chloe enters Duke Damien's room with her medical supplies to attend to his injuries. You look like a prisoner being led to the gallows, Duke Damien says, flipping through a book he was reading as he catches a glimpse of her unhappy look. A simple request should not inspire such dread, he tells her as he remains seated on his bed, holding his book. Please show me your wound, Chloe asks him softly. Why don't you look for it yourself, he tells her. Then you must roll up your sleeve at the very least, she tells him as she sits down next to him. I am sure you are capable of that much, Chloe. With all due respect, Chloe says, facing down as she sighs. It is not proper for an unmarried woman such as myself to be touching a man's body, Chloe tells him, turning her face away, holding a bottle of rubbing alcohol for his wound. How old-fashioned of you, Duke Damien says with a smirk, dropping his book on the bed. Well, I suppose you are right, he says, removing the buttons from his shirt. He flings his shirt, revealing his full chest. Chloe watched in amazement, her face turning red as he drops his clothes. Lady Chloe, I know it might be hard to resist, but I think it'd be better if you don't stare so, he tells her as he sits bare-chested, watching her facial reaction. I never told him to take his shirt off, Chloe thought, blushing instantly. One moment, she says as she disinfects his injury using the rubbing alcohol. This may be painful, she informs him. I want you to make me suffer as much as possible, he tells her. You said your private tutor was a physician? Duke Damien asks her, to which she says yes. That must be useful in situations like this, he tells her as she begins stitching his injury. She tells him she did learn a little bit about medicine from him, but it is a different pursuit entirely that is coming in use now, she says. And what might that be? He asks her, concerned. Embroidery, she tells him, concentrating on her stitches. Chloe stops for a moment, taking a look at the Duke. This is the first time in my life I've regarded embroidery as a useful pastime, Duke Damien says, laughing. Ah, right, she says softly. Do tell, does your sister still hold secret rendezvous after dark? He asks her suddenly, startling her. Please refrain from speaking, you should be as still as possible, Chloe tells him, trying to deflect his question. Answer my question, Duke Damien demands. Since that night, she has seen the errors of her ways and thanks to your grace, there is talk of marriage between her and Count Cormier. I am most appreciative, she tells him, finally succumbing to his demand. Had I known my silence would be repaid with 3 months of silence from you, I would never have done you that favor, he says, leaning forward to her face. You are much too close, your grace, Chloe says, turning red. Answer me, he says harshly. I wrote you many letters, she says, stuttering, her heart racing. I never received a single one, he says to her. Because I could not bring myself to send them, she tells him. Your pathetic attempts to lie disappoint me, he says, raising her heart rate. Your grace, please, not so close, Chloe says, trying to push him away from her. Tell me the truth, Chloe, he demands. She bites her lips slightly, getting tense. It's because you despise me, she says, bowing her head in shame. Is that your answer? He says awkwardly. I am well aware how unbearably repulsive you find me. That is why I hesitated so. I was unsure of how I should try to repay you. My apologies, she tells him, finishing her stitches. I have finished what I came to do. I shall take my leave, Chloe tells him, finally getting up from her seat. She trembles as she walks gently, holding her medicine tray. Chloe steps on the Duke's shirt on the floor. She slips, her tray falling. Duke Damien stretches forward, grabbing her and protecting her from falling. Her tray clatters on the floor with a thud. Duke Damien places Chloe on the bed, staying on top of her. She is startled. Your grace, your arm, she says, noticing his injury reopened as he bled. You can always fix it again, can you not? He asks her. She looks at him, looking nervous. Your grace, what on earth is it that you want from me? Chloe asks, clenching her dress as she turns red. He says, stroking her hair. I think you already know the answer to that, he says, perceiving her hair. I am only here to treat you per my father's instructions, she said, turning her head away from his gaze. Oh, Lady Chloe, so you truly believe that is all he wanted? He says, with a sinister look. This is the same conversation we had 3 years ago, Chloe thought as she watched him quietly. I understand why you doubt people's intentions, for you have learned not to trust others while on the battlefield. However, to think every woman in the kingdom is desperate to marry you is a bit of an egotistical delusion, Chloe tells him. Is it not? Duke Damien asks her. There is a bit of silence between them as their eyes are fixed on each other. Duke Damien began laughing, which caught Chloe by surprise. Why is he laughing? She thought, feeling taken aback. Maybe he really is unhinged, she finalized in her mind. Fine, shall we put your theory to the test? He says, taking her words as a challenge. He pulled her up back to a sitting position. You may go, you've done what you came for, he tells her, finally letting her go. Back in her room, Chloe sighed, her heartbeats calming down. She limped to her dressing table. Why did I waste time agonizing over how to thank such an awful man, she thought, picking up her hand gloves. I was a fool to even think of giving him these, she thought, observing the hand gloves. I should have used a thicker needle, she said inwardly, sulking. She placed her present back on the table. I must not let my emotions get the best of me. After all, it is thanks to him that Alice met Count Cormier, she thought, watching her own reflection in the mirror. She stepped closer to her windows, swinging them open. Once she gets married, and things become more stable, everything will be all right, Chloe thought confidently. Chloe sat down, perplexed at the Duke's words. Chloe, are you sure it was his arm that the Duke injured and not his head? Alice says softly, whispering to Chloe. Your Grace, I am not sure I heard you correctly, Viscount Verdier says, looking tense. I said I wish to propose marriage to your daughter, Lady Alice Verdier, Duke Damien says, placing his cup down. Ha ha ha, well, you see, there is already talk of engagement between my daughter and Count Cormier, the Viscount says, still laughing slightly. Is that so? Duke Damien asks him. Yes, that's right, ha ha ha, he says, laughing. The fact, however, does not change my desire to have her hand in marriage, Duke Damien says, sipping his tea calmly. It seems you do not find me adequate, as you keep making unnecessary remarks, Lord Verdier, he says, grinning slightly. The room went quiet. Oh, of course, that is not the case, Your Grace, but regardless of what I think, I must also respect my daughter's wishes, Viscount Verdier says finally. Alice's head remained bowed as she looked perplexed. Yes, I am sure you must, Duke Damien says, dropping his cup. I will give you 3 days to deliberate, he says, rising from his seat. In the meantime, I shall be staying in my villa on the neighboring estate, he announces as he puts on his gloves. He watched Chloe closely before a smirk played on his lips. I do hope you will give the matter thorough consideration, he said before taking his leave. I never asked to be a duchess, Alice says, stomping angrily into her room. She weeps, lying down on her bed. I know what an opportunity this is for us, Chloe says calmly, trying to console her sister. But, Alice, she adds softly, touching her shoulder. What on earth is he thinking? Why would he propose so unexpectedly? Chloe thought, remembering the bet he made to her the previous night. You do not have to go through with this if it's not what you want. I will speak to father, she tells Alice, prompting her to turn and face her. Chloe, Alice says through her tears, hugging her sister tightly. What if something goes wrong and I can't get married? What will happen to us then? Now that the Duke has proposed, this will surely end things with Count Cormier. And if I refuse the Duke, he's sure to. Do not cry, my sister. Everything will be all right, Chloe says, consoling her. You will receive new marriage offers in time. Don't worry. Just bear it a little longer. I am in love with Eddie, Alice confesses. Alice, that man is, Chloe begins, but is cut short by her sister. I am carrying his child, Chloe. What can I do? Alice asks in tears. Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive and we'll catch you in the next episode.